And then,
the galaxy had a word for what Palpatine was doing. The word was consolidation. It appeared in Senate records, in military briefings, in the careful language of emergency powers legislation that accumulated in the Chancellor's office, the way sediment accumulated at the bottom of a river. Slowly, naturally, invisibly, until one day you looked at the riverbed and understood that what you were looking at was not sediment anymore, but stone. Consolidation meant the emergency powers that superseded standard Senate procedure. The military appointments that bypassed committee review. The intelligence operations that carried authorization codes, referencing other authorization codes that referenced nothing. The 41 senators who attended meetings that generated no transcripts and left carrying understandings they couldn't point to the source of. Consolidation was the architecture. Order 66 was the moment the architecture became a building you couldn't leave. But architecture had a property that Palpatine had spent 30 years relying on, and 8 billion humans on an uncharted world had spent 6 months systematically dismantling. It was only invisible to the people inside it. Rex had named the mechanism. Lucas had described the moment. Chen had mapped the frequency. Obi-Wan had transmitted everything to Yoda. And Anakin Skywalker was on a shuttle heading towards the conversation that determined which version of the future became real. The one where the galaxy burned for 20 years, or the one where someone arrived first. But Palpatine was accelerating. The cracks were visible. What happened next depended entirely on whether the people who could see the cracks moved faster than the man who had built the walls. Yoda received Obi-Wan's transmission at 0600 Coruscant Standard Time in his chambers at the Jedi Temple, where he had been awake for 2 hours already because the Force had been doing something unusual in the pre-dawn quiet that he had not yet found language to describe. Not a warning. Warnings had a specific texture in the Force, sharp, directional, carrying the urgency of immediate threat. This was different. This was the feeling of something that had been moving slowly for a very long time, finally moving fast. The way a river felt different in the last kilometers before it reached the sea. The same water, the same current, but something in the quality of the movement communicating that the landscape was about to change permanently. He had been sitting with that feeling for 2 hours when Obi-Wan's transmission arrived. He read it once. Then he sat for a long moment with it, which was not hesitation but was the specific quality of stillness that came from receiving something large and needing to hold it correctly before moving. Obi-Wan had sent everything. The inhibitor chip architecture, Rex's 17 pages, Lucas's vision of the office and the conversation, and the 2 versions of the same moment. Chen's plasma deflection incident and the timeline of her emerging sensitivity. The extraction team and its suspended authorization. The 43 clone captains holding on frequencies Palpatine hadn't mapped. The Mandalorian Alliance. The Earth's Cyber Division's assessment of the activation frequency's jammability. And at the end, in Obi-Wan's precise, careful prose, the conclusion that the transmission was building toward from its first line. The Sith Lord we have been searching for has been in this building, in these meetings, authorizing these operations, designing this war from both sides simultaneously. I should have seen it sooner. I am telling you now because now is when we can still do something about it. Yoda set the datapad down, looked at the temple's pre-dawn skyline through his window. The Force had been telling him something was wrong for years. Not about the war. The war's wrongness was visible without the Force. About something deeper, something structural. He had meditated on it, consulted with it, erased it in council sessions in language careful enough not to constitute an accusation and specific enough to communicate concern. Had watched the other masters respond with the same careful language in return. Everyone sensing the shape of a thing none of them were naming. They had not named it because naming it required evidence, and evidence required looking directly at the thing you were afraid to see. Obi-Wan had looked. Yoda picked up the datapad again and reread Rex's 17 pages with the attention of someone who understood that the document was not a report but a testimony. A clone captain in hyperspace, reconstructing the architecture of his own exploitation with the precision of someone who had decided that clarity mattered more than the comfort of not knowing. He thought about the 3,400,000 clones, thought about what it meant that they had been built this way, that someone had looked at the project of creating an army from human genetic material and decided that the most important feature of those humans was not their combat capability or their loyalty or their courage, all of which were considerable as 3 years of war had demonstrated, but their inability to refuse. Thought about Rex filing Fives' discovery under insufficient information and moving on. Thought about all the things that had been filed under insufficient information and moved on from across 30 years of a very long and patient plan. He set the datapad down again, stood, crossed to his communication terminal, and composed 4 transmissions simultaneously, which was unusual even for him. He preferred sequential communication, one thread at a time, each given its full weight. But sequential communication had a timeline that the current situation did not accommodate. The first was to Masters Mace Windu, Ki Adi Mundi, and Plo Koon. It contained everything Obi-Wan had sent and 3 words of his own: "Come to me." The second was to the Republic Medical Corps liaison, a woman named Dr. Nala Se, who had spent the Clone Wars as Kamino's primary medical contact, and who Yoda had long suspected knew more about the inhibitor chip program than she had ever been asked directly about. The transmission contained Rex's chip architecture documentation and one question: confirm or deny. The third was to a frequency that did not appear in any official Republic communication directory. It was a frequency Yoda had been given 40 years ago by a Jedi Master who was now long dead, who had given it to him with the instruction that it was for the category of situation where the usual channels were the problem rather than the solution. Yoda had never used it. He used it now. The fourth was to Obi-Wan. It contained 2 sentences. "I have read everything. Move." Dr. Nalase's response came in 11 minutes. It was 4 words. "The chips are real." And then, after a pause that Yoda could feel, even across the transmission gap, 11 more. "I have been waiting for someone to ask for 3 years." Yoda read this and felt something that was not quite anger and not quite grief, but contained elements of both. The specific feeling of understanding that a harm that could have been prevented had been allowed to continue because the people who knew about it had decided that knowing without acting was a survivable position. He transmitted back Immediately, come to Coruscant. Bring everything. Then he went to meet the 3 masters he had summoned. The council chamber had a quality in the early morning that it lacked during formal sessions. Without the full complement of masters, without the formality of the circle, without the weight of official deliberation, it was simply a room with good light and a view of Coruscant's endless cityscape. Yoda had always found the morning chamber more honest than the session chamber. Formal deliberation had its own architecture, the way questions were framed, the order of speaking, the particular language that council sessions generated, that communicated gravity without always communicating truth. This morning there was no formal deliberation. Mace Windu read Rex's document standing up, which was unusual for him. See, he was a man who brought stillness to everything he did, who used physical composure as a form of precision. Reading standing up communicated something about what the document was doing to that composure. When he finished, he looked at Yoda. "You believe this?" "Confirm it, Nalase does," Yoda said. Waiting 3 years for someone to ask, she has been. Windu was quiet for a moment. "If Palpatine is Sidious," he said, and stopped. "Yes," Yoda said. Windu understood what the yes covered: the emergency powers, the Senate's gradual erosion, the Jedi's slow conversion from peacekeepers into generals, the war that had lasted 3 years without resolution, because resolution was never the point. The architecture of a republic that was being hollowed from the inside by the man everyone had trusted to hold it together. Order 66, Ki-Adi-Mundi said. He had been standing at the viewport. 3 million clones, every active theater simultaneously. "Not if the frequency is jammed," Plo Koon said. He had been reading the technical section of Rex's document. Earth's cyber division assesses local jamming as achievable. Broader coverage requires relay infrastructure. "Our relay infrastructure," Windu said. "Which Palpatine controls," Ki-Adi-Mundi said. "Controls officially," Yoda said. "Know about every relay he does not." He looked at each of them. "Hidden the Order has kept certain infrastructure for certain categories of contingency. This is that contingency." Windu turned from the window. "If we move against Palpatine without absolute proof, have absolute proof we do," Yoda said. "Proof that will hold in the Senate. Proof that won't be dismissed as a Jedi coup attempt." Yoda thought about this. Thought about Lucas sitting in Geneva at 0340 with shaken hands and 12 pages of handwriting that described the exact words Palpatine used in a private office to turn fear into complicity. "A witness," Yoda said, "one the Senate cannot dismiss." "Lucas," Plo Koon said. "And Rex," Windu said. "A clone captain's testimony about what's in his own skull is not easily characterized as Jedi political maneuvering." "And Earth's cyber division," Ki-Adi-Mundi added. "Independent technical verification of the chip architecture from a non-Republic source." "Yes," Yoda said. The 4 of them stood in the morning light with the weight of what they were about to do. Not a coup, not a power move. Not the Jedi asserting themselves against civilian authority in the way that Palpatine had spent years suggesting they might. Something simpler and more difficult. A group of people who had been inside a structure so long they had stopped seeing it, finally seeing it, and deciding what to do about what they saw. "Anakin," Windu said. It was not a question. "Going to Kenobi, he is," Yoda said. The conversation Lucas described, the one that must happen before Palpatine's. He paused. Trust him, we must. Windu looked at him. You've been worried about Anakin for years, he said. Worried, yes, Yoda said. Because alone with his fear, he has been. Because the things he carries, he has carried without help. This is the thing that breaks people. Not the fear itself. The aloneness of the fear. He looked at Rex's document on the table. It was at the 17 pages of a man who had discovered the architecture of his own exploitation and written it down clearly so that other people would understand it. But alone, he is no longer. Changed things have. Earth has changed them. Windu was quiet for a moment, then he nodded. We need to move before Palpatine does, he said. Yes, Yoda agreed. Before and together, and without the aloneness that the architecture was designed to create. He looked at Coruscant through the viewport. At the city that had been the Republic's heart for 25,000 years, currently hosting in an office 3 kilometers from where he stood, the man who had spent 30 of those years hollowing that heart from the inside. Much to do, Yoda said. Little time. He turned from the viewport. The morning light was full now. Somewhere in Earth's solar system, Yuki was mapping activation frequencies with the focused intensity of someone who found inadequate security architecture personally offensive. Somewhere on a shuttle between Earth and the Negotiator, Anakin was preparing for a conversation he had been moving toward without knowing it for 3 years. Somewhere in Geneva, Lucas was drinking his 3rd coffee and writing down the details of a vision that was finally, for the first time, showing him something other than darkness at the end. The architecture had cracks. The people who could see the cracks were moving. Yoda walked to the door. Come, he said, much to do. The Negotiator was 3 hours from the Coruscant shipping lanes when Anakin's shuttle docked. Obi-Wan met him in the hangar bay, which was unusual. Obi-Wan did not typically meet people in hangar bays. He was a man who received visitors in offices or briefing rooms, or when the situation was informal, on observation decks where the stars provided a kind of neutral third presence that made difficult conversations easier to begin. Hangar bays were loud and smelled of engine coolant and had the specific quality of transitional spaces. Places you passed through rather than places where things happened. The fact that Obi-Wan was standing in this one alone, without the administrative justification of needing to discuss something operational before Anakin reached the interior of the ship. It communicated something Anakin noted and filed without commenting on. His former master looked tired, not the physical tiredness of someone who had not slept, though that was probably also true, the other kind. The kind that accumulated from carrying something heavy for a long time, while pretending the weight was manageable, and then finally setting it down and discovering that setting it down was its own kind of exhaustion. They stood in the hangar bay for a moment. Around them, deck crew moved with the efficient indifference of people doing their jobs, in a space that generals occasionally occupied, but fundamentally belonged to the work. The Negotiator breathed its mechanical breath. Somewhere 3 decks up, and clone officers were running the ship through a quiet transit that had been scheduled as a routine resupply run and was actually something else entirely. You read everything, Anakin said. Yes. Yoda? Moving. The council is convening. Obi-Wan paused. Nala Se confirmed the chips. Anakin absorbed this. She's been sitting on it for 3 years. Yes, because nobody asked. Because the people who might have asked were inside the architecture, Obi-Wan said. And the architecture was designed to make asking feel like the dangerous choice. They began walking, not toward the briefing room, not toward the observation deck, just walking, which was something they had done throughout Anakin's training when conversations needed motion rather than stillness. Obi-Wan had understood early that his apprentice processed things better moving than sitting. That stillness sometimes converted thought into pressure rather than clarity. Old habit. Anakin noticed it and felt something he didn't name. Lucas described the conversation, Anakin said. I know, I read his transmission. Both versions. Yes. Anakin was quiet for a moment. They moved through a corridor that ran along the ship's port side, viewports showing the transit stars as elongated light against the dark. He had walked this corridor dozens of times during the war, had walked it after Geonosis, after Christophsis, now after a dozen campaigns whose names had accumulated into the general category of the war in a way that made it difficult to remember them as individual things. In the version where I fall, he said, I've been carrying the fear alone. Yes, Palpatine becomes the first person who knows I'm carrying it. Yes, and because he's the first, he owns it. Anakin paused. He can do whatever he wants with something only he's holding. Obi-Wan said nothing. The corridor was quiet except for the ship's systems and their footsteps. I've been carrying it alone, Anakin said, for years. I know, Obi-Wan said. You knew. I knew something. I didn't know what it was connected to. Obi-Wan stopped walking. Anakin stopped too. His former master was looking at the viewport, at the transit stars, at the specific quality of hyperspace light that was unlike any other light in the galaxy. Blue, white, and constant, and somehow both infinite and enclosed, as if the universe had made a private space for things that needed to travel between one place and another without being observed. I was afraid, Obi-Wan said, of what I would see if I looked directly at it, afraid that looking would... He paused. That acknowledging how much you were struggling would make it real, would make the outcome Lucas described more likely rather than less, as if not naming it was a form of protection. Anakin looked at him. It wasn't, Obi-Wan said. I understand that now. Not naming something doesn't make it smaller. It just makes you carry it alone. The corridor was very quiet. I'm going to tell you something, Anakin said. And I need you to not respond to it the way you respond to things that concern you, which is to make your face very still and start choosing your words very carefully. That's a reasonable request, Obi-Wan said, with the faint quality of someone who recognized the accuracy of the description. I have nightmares about Padme dying. Anakin said it the way you said things you had been not saying for a long time. Flatly, without decoration, with the specific verbal texture of a statement that had been composed and revised and finally delivered without revision. Not vague fears, specific dreams, detailed. She dies in childbirth and I can't stop it, and I wake up and the fear is... He stopped. Obi-Wan's face was still. You're doing the thing, Anakin said. I'm trying not to. Try harder. Obi-Wan exhaled. What does the fear feel like? It was not the question Anakin had expected. He had expected something measured and considered, something that acknowledged the information and contextualized it within Jedi teaching on attachment, something careful. The directness of the question landed differently than careful would have. Like something I have to solve, Anakin said. Like a tactical problem that I haven't found the right approach to yet. Like if I just... He stopped again. Started differently. I keep thinking that if I'm powerful enough, if I know enough, if I find the right knowledge, I can prevent it. That death is a problem with a solution, and I just haven't found the solution yet. And when Palpatine offers you the solution. Yes. Anakin looked at the viewport. That's the mechanism. Lucas was precise about it. Palpatine doesn't offer me power. He offers me the answer to a specific problem I've been working on alone. And because I've been working on it alone, because nobody else knows the shape of it, his answer feels like understanding rather than manipulation. Because it is understanding, Obi-Wan said. That's the part that makes it effective. He genuinely understands your fear. He's been cultivating knowledge of it for years. The manipulation is real, and the understanding is also real, and the two things coexist because that's how it works. He paused. I should have understood that sooner. I kept thinking of it as deception, simple lies. But the most dangerous version isn't lies. It's someone using accurate knowledge of your pain to root you somewhere you wouldn't go otherwise. Anakin turned from the viewport to look at him. The Earth taught me that, Obi-Wan continued, watching Dooku's presentation to the UN Security Council. Every claim he made was accurate. The Republic's failures were real. The Outer Rim exploitation was real. The clone program's ethics were genuinely questionable. He used true things to build a false conclusion, and it nearly worked because you can't argue with the true things. You can only change what conclusions they lead to, Anakin said. Yes. They stood in the corridor with that for a moment. I'm afraid of losing her, Anakin said. That's not going away. I don't think I can make it go away. I don't think Jedi doctrine on non-attachment is... He paused. It's never fully made sense to me. The idea that you protect yourself from loss by not allowing yourself to care enough to lose. It feels like it's solving the wrong problem. It is solving the wrong problem, Obi-Wan said. Anakin looked at him. The Order has been wrong about attachment, Obi-Wan said, with the specific quality of someone saying something they had been assembling for a long time and had not previously said out loud. Not entirely wrong. The principle that possessive love creates suffering is true. But the conclusion the Order drew, that the solution is emotional distance, that's wrong. Distance doesn't eliminate the fear of loss. It just means you're afraid in isolation. He paused. Earth understood something we didn't, that the answer to fear isn't distance, it's company. Anakin was very still. Lucas said the second version works because someone got there first, Obi-Wan said, before Palpatine. He's someone who sits with the fear alongside you, so that when Palpatine offers to be the only person who understands it, the offer doesn't land, because it isn't true anymore. He looked at his former apprentice. I should have been that person years ago. I'm telling you now because now is when it matters. You're afraid of losing me, Anakin said. It was not an accusation. It was recognition. Yes, Obi-Wan said simply, profoundly, in ways I have also been carrying alone. Because the Order's doctrine applied to me the same way it applied to you, and I made the same mistake of treating distance as protection." He paused. "It wasn't protection. It was just a different shape of the same fear." The transit stars moved past the viewport. Anakin felt something shift, not dramatically, not the way things shifted in battles, with the clean clarity of tactical decision. More the way the light shifted in the morning when you had been awake all night, and the darkness became something different without a clear moment of transition. "Padme is strong," he said. It was not a reassurance. It was a fact he was examining. "Yes, she survived more assassination attempts than I can count. She chose a career that put her in direct opposition to people with the resources to eliminate her, and did it anyway, repeatedly, because she believed what she was doing mattered." Anakin paused. "She doesn't need me to prevent her death. She needs me to trust that she can face whatever comes as herself." "Yes," Obi-Wan said, "and the dreams are fear. Real fear about a real person you genuinely love. That doesn't go away. But fear you carry with company is different from fear you carry alone." Obi-Wan looked at him directly. "You've been alone with it. You don't have to be." Anakin looked at his former master, at the tiredness in his face and the honesty that had replaced the careful word selection and the specific quality of someone who had set down something heavy and was still feeling the echo of the weight. "You're terrible at this," Anakin said. "I know," Obi-Wan said. "I've had no practice. The Order. I'm not criticizing. I'm saying it for accuracy." Anakin paused. "I'm also terrible at it. Yes. We've both been terrible at it for years. Yes. And we're doing it anyway." "We are?" The corridor was quiet. Then Anakin said something he had not said in the specific way it needed to be said in the entire time he had known Obi-Wan Kenobi. "I'm afraid of losing her. I have been for a long time. I've been working on it alone because it felt like something I should be able to solve, and not being able to solve it felt like a failure, and I didn't want anyone to know about the failure." "I know," Obi-Wan said. "Now you know. Now I know. And Palpatine's offer is something you'll recognize," Obi-Wan said, "because it's no longer the first time someone has understood what you're carrying. The shape of the trap is visible now, and visible traps are traps you can walk around," Anakin finished. They stood in the corridor for another moment. Outside the viewport, hyperspace did what hyperspace did. The negotiator moved through the blue-white space between one place and another. They carrying two people who had been having a version of this conversation for years and were finally having it completely. "What happens now?" Anakin asked. "Yoda moves, the council moves. Rex's document reaches every clone captain who needs it. Chen covers the activation frequency. Lucas stays in Geneva with Bo-Katan and continues having visions we hope are showing him the second version." Obi-Wan paused. "And you go back to Coruscant, to Palpatine?" "Yes, to have the conversation." "Yes, except this time you're not alone in the room." "Not really." Obi-Wan looked at him. "You know what he's going to say. You know the sequence. You know the gap he's designed to fill. And you know that the gap isn't empty anymore." Anakin nodded. One nod, certain and clean. "He's going to sense something is different," Anakin said. Yes. He'll know his timeline is compromised. He already knows. The extraction team's suspension told him that. Obi-Wan's voice was precise. He'll accelerate, which means the conversation may come sooner than Lucas estimated. How soon? That depends on how frightened he is. Anakin thought about a man who had spent 30 years building architecture that was currently developing cracks at the foundation. About what fear looked like in someone who had converted everything, including fear, into tactical calculation. He'll move within 48 hours, Anakin said. I think so too. Then I need to be on Coruscant in 12. The shuttle can make it in 10. They turned from the viewport, began walking back toward the hangar. The deck crew moved around them with efficient indifference. The negotiator breathed its systems. "The Obi-Wan," Anakin said. "Yes, thank you." Obi-Wan said nothing for a moment. The nothing had the specific quality of someone receiving something they had not known they needed and were not entirely sure what to do with. "Get on the shuttle," he said finally, "and don't do anything reckless." Define reckless. Anything that wouldn't survive scrutiny from someone who loves you and is paying attention. Anakin almost smiled. It was the almost smile of someone who was still afraid, who would probably always be afraid, about the specific things that mattered enough to be afraid about, but was afraid in the way you were afraid when you were not alone with it. Different. Manageable. His. He got on the shuttle. Palpatine knew something had changed before Anakin walked through the door, not because the Force told him. The Force's silence around Anakin had always been one of its most useful properties. The boy was loud in the Force the way powerful things were loud. His emotional state readable at considerable distance by anyone with the sensitivity to perceive it. Palpatine had been reading that signal for 13 years, had learned its frequencies, had mapped the specific signatures of Anakin's anger, his grief, his fear, his love for Padme, his attachment to Obi-Wan that he expressed as irritation because genuine affection made him feel exposed. He knew those frequencies the way a musician knew their instrument. What he perceived now was different, not the absence of fear. The fear was still there. He could sense it clearly. The deep, specific terror of losing Padme that had been Anakin's most reliable vulnerability since the night Shmi Skywalker died in a Tusken camp, and Anakin had come back to the Lars homestead with blood on his hands, and the specific expression of someone who had discovered that love without power was just grief waiting to happen. The fear was there, but it was carried differently. He stood at his office window looking out at Coruscant's perpetual artificial day and thought about that distinction. Fear carried alone had a specific quality in the Force. Pressurized, isolated, the way a sealed container felt different from an open one even at the same internal pressure. What he sensed from Anakin now was the same fear but without the isolation, as if the container had been opened, as if the pressure had somewhere to go. It was subtle. Most Sith would have missed it. He did not miss it. He turned from the window as Anakin entered. His Chancellor's face assembled itself automatically. The concerned warmth, the fatherly attention, the specific quality of a man who had always had more time for Anakin Skywalker than anyone else in the Republic's power structure, and had always made sure Anakin understood that this was a choice rather than an obligation. 13 years of careful construction. The relationship that had been built one conversation at a time each exchange calibrated to deepen dependency while appearing to offer freedom. "Anakin," he said, "I'm glad you came. Sit down." Anakin sat. He looked different, not visibly. His posture was the same. His expression carried the same base state tension of a man who had been at war for 3 years and carried its weight in his body. But there was something in his eyes that Palpatine's extensive experience reading this specific person told him was new, not relief, not peace, nothing so simple as either. Something more like orientation, the quality of a man who knew where he was standing. "You seem tired," Palpatine said, settling into the chair across from him with the ease of long practice. "The situation on Earth has been demanding. I understand the extraction operation encountered complications." "It was suspended," Anakin said. "The authorization didn't hold." "Yes." Palpatine allowed a brief expression of measured concern. "I wanted to speak with you about that. Dr. Chen's situation requires careful handling. An uncontrolled force sensitive in that environment with that access is a medical situation," Anakin said. The same words Chen had used with the extraction team. The phrasing was not accidental. Palpatine noted it and continued. "Of course," he said. "Though medical situations involving force sensitivity have implications that extend beyond standard care. The Jedi Order has protocols, which exist to help people," Anakin said, "not to extract them from their homes for undisclosed purposes, through operations that don't carry proper Senate authorization." The office was quiet. Palpatine looked at Anakin with the expression of a man absorbing unexpected directness from someone he cared about. The expression was genuine. The directness was unexpected. The Anakin who sat across from him now was speaking with a clarity that the Anakin of 6 months ago would not have produced in this room. The room had always worked on Anakin a specific way. The intimacy of it, the sense of being seen and understood that Palpatine had spent years constructing, had reliably produced a version of Anakin that was more open, more trusting, more willing to voice things he kept carefully controlled elsewhere. That opening had been the mechanism. That trust had been the tool. The trust was still there. He could sense it, but it was not alone anymore. "You're right to raise the authorization question," Palpatine said, pivoting smoothly. "The operation was handled poorly. I've asked for a review." He paused. "I wanted to speak with you about something more personal. How are you, Anakin? Truly, not the report, not the tactical assessment." His voice dropped to the register he had calibrated over years for exactly this moment. Warm, private, the sound of a room where it was safe to say things you couldn't say anywhere else. "I know you've been carrying a great deal." Anakin looked at him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Palpatine let the silence sit. Silence was a tool. It created pressure that people who were uncomfortable with not speaking filled with the thing they most needed to say. He had used this silence with Anakin before, and it had always produced something useful. "I have," Anakin said. "I've been carrying a lot for a long time." "Yes," Palpatine said, with the gentle authority of someone confirming what they had always known. "And I imagine that becomes heavier as the war continues. As the stakes become clearer." He leaned forward slightly. "I want you to know that whatever you're carrying, you can speak of it here. I have always—" "I know," Anakin said. Something in the quality of those two words, Not dismissive, not cold, but with a completeness to them that suggested they were closing something rather than opening it. I know, as in, I understand what you're offering and I see the shape of it and I don't need it in the way you've structured it. Palpatine looked at him, made an adjustment that was invisible because 30 years of practice had made all his adjustments invisible. The nightmares, he said, quieter now, more direct. If the general approach wasn't landing, there was always the specific. About Padme. Anakin's expression did not change in the way it would previously have changed. No flicker of the exposed vulnerability, no quick suppression of something too visible. The fear was there. He hadn't eliminated it, couldn't have in 2 days even if he'd tried. But the fear did not produce the usual response of someone who had been seen in a private place by the only person they had allowed into it. "How do you know about the nightmares?" Anakin asked. The question was direct, not accusatory, not frightened. Direct in the way that someone was direct when they were asking a question they already had a working answer to and wanted confirmation. Palpatine considered his options in the space of a breath. He had been having this conversation in various forms, with various carefully selected subjects, for 30 years. He understood its architecture completely. The question, "How do you know?" was the question of someone who had stepped outside the room and was now looking at it from the outside and seeing its dimensions for the first time. It was the question he had been hoping not to hear. "I've noticed," he said carefully, "the effect the war has on those close to me. Your worry for Padme has been evident for some time to anyone paying attention." "Evident how?" "The way you speak about her safety, your response to missions that take you far from Coruscant." Palpatine paused. "And there are Jedi healers' reports that are confidential," Anakin said. "Of course." A pause measured to a fraction of a second. "I want to help you, Anakin. I have always wanted to help you. You know this." "I do," Anakin said. And then, after a moment, "I also know you've been managing that want very carefully for a long time." The office was completely still. This was new. In 13 years of this relationship, Anakin had never said anything that contained this particular structure. The acknowledgement of the relationship as a construction, with a constructor, with intent behind the construction. The closest he had come was occasional resistance, occasional frustration with what he perceived as political manipulation in Republic governance. But those resistances had always been emotional, reactive, the flailing of someone who sensed something wrong without being able to name it. This was named, not fully, not with the specific evidence that would constitute a confrontation, but named in the way that a person named something when they had been shown its shape from the outside and could finally see it from the inside. Palpatine made a decision. The conversation he had planned, the Padme vulnerability, the pathway to the dark side, the careful cultivation of desperation that would make Anakin reach for power he would not otherwise reach for. That conversation required a specific entry point, required Anakin to be alone with his fear in the way he had always been alone with it, required the isolation that made Palpatine's understanding feel like rescue. The entry point was closed. He could see it clearly, not because of any single thing Anakin had said, but because of the quality of presence he had brought into the room. The fear was real and present and unchanged. But fear with company was not the same instrument as fear in isolation. You could not play it the same way. He needed to understand what had changed and how completely. "You've been spending time with the Earth delegation," he said, shifting registers, making it sound like an observation rather than an assessment. "Their perspective on galactic politics is refreshingly direct. I understand it's been influential." "They have a gift," Anakin said, "for seeing the outside of things that people inside them can't see anymore." "Yes," Palpatine said. "I've noticed. George Lucas in particular seems to have unusual insights." Anakin looked at him steadily. "Lucas has Force visions." "So I understand." A pause. "Remarkable for someone from a world without Force sensitivity." "What has he seen?" The question was direct because indirection had stopped working, and direct questions sometimes produced useful answers, and sometimes produced the quality of silence that was itself an answer. Anakin's expression did not change. "Enough," he said. "One word, the specific weight of a word chosen with care." Palpatine sat with the word. In 30 years of this work, he had encountered failure before. Plans that required revision, timelines that needed adjustment, subjects who proved more resistant than anticipated. He had always adapted because adaptation was the Sith's oldest skill. The ability to wait, to recalculate, to find the new angle that the changed situation had created. He looked at Anakin, at the young man who had been the center of his plan for 13 years. The chosen one, the most powerful Force-sensitive born in a generation, the key to everything he had been building since before the Clone Wars began. He looked at him and understood that the thing he had been most careful about for 13 years, the management of Anakin's fear, the cultivation of his isolation, the positioning of himself as the only person who truly understood what Anakin carried, had been disrupted, not destroyed, not proven false. The fear was still real and present, and Anakin still loved Padme with the intensity that made him vulnerable. Those facts hadn't changed, but fear shared was not fear owned. And fear with a name, spoken out loud to someone who understood it and stayed anyway, was fear that had lost its ability to be the first step in someone else's direction. "You seem," Palpatine said carefully, "at peace." "Not at peace," Anakin said. "Still afraid. Still carrying everything I've been carrying." He looked at the older man across the desk with the specific quality of someone who could now see the architecture they were sitting inside. Just not alone with it. The office was quiet. Outside, Coruscant continued its perpetual artificial day. 3 kilometers away, in the Jedi Temple, Yoda was meeting with 3 masters in a morning chamber. Somewhere in Republic relay infrastructure that Palpatine did not have complete knowledge of, a jamming protocol was being tested against activation frequencies by a woman with purple hair who found inadequate security architecture aesthetically offensive. Palpatine looked at Anakin. Anakin looked back. Neither of them spoke for a moment, and in that moment, in the silence of an office with simple furniture and intimate lighting and 30 years of careful construction in its walls, something shifted in the architecture, not collapsed, not yet, but cracked. The way foundations cracked when the ground beneath them had changed, and the building above had not yet registered what the ground already knew. "I'm glad you have support," Palpatine said finally. His voice carried the warmth he had constructed. But warmth was a frequency, and frequencies could be heard differently by people who knew what they were listening for. These are difficult times. None of us should carry our burdens alone. No, Anakin agreed. We shouldn't. He stood. The meeting was ended before Palpatine had intended it to end, and through a motion that was Anakin's rather than his, which had not happened in 13 years of this relationship. "I'll be in touch," Anakin said. "There's a great deal happening." "Yes," Palpatine said. "There is?" Anakin walked to the door, paused with his hand on the frame, did not turn around. "Thank you," he said, "for everything you've offered over the years. I mean that genuinely." He left. The door closed. Palpatine stood in the quiet of his office for a long moment with the specific stillness of a man who had just watched a plan he had spent 13 years constructing encounter, the one variable he had not adequately prepared for. Not power, not knowledge, not a Jedi intervention or a Senate investigation, or any of the threats he had mapped and prepared for. Someone had simply sat with Anakin Skywalker in a corridor on a Republic cruiser and been honest about being afraid. And that had been enough. He crossed to his communication terminal. He had preparations to accelerate. The architecture was cracked, but it was not broken, and there were still mechanisms in motion that did not depend on Anakin, and 3 million chips in 3 million skulls were still waiting for a frequency that had not yet been compromised, and there was still time if he moved now and moved completely. He began composing a transmission. In Geneva, at that precise moment, Lucas looked up from his notebook with an expression that Bo-Katan, watching from the doorway, recognized immediately as the expression of someone whose vision had just changed. "It's happening," Lucas said. Bo-Katan's hand moved to her weapon. "How long?" she asked. Lucas looked at the notebook. "Hours," he said. The activation frequency was a single tone. Yuki had known this from the moment she finished mapping the chip architecture, because elegant systems were always simple at their core, and the people who designed systems for total control understood that complexity created failure points. A single tone broadcast on a specific frequency, carrying a specific modulation pattern that the chips were tuned to recognize, and the broader electromagnetic spectrum would never produce naturally. Simple, clean, reliable. Also, as she had told Chen 3 weeks ago, with the cheerful precision of someone describing an opponent's fatal mistake, embarrassingly jammable. She had been building the jamming array for 19 days. Not because 19 days was how long it took to build a jamming array for a single frequency. It was how long it took to build a jamming array for a single frequency that needed to cover a solar system, maintain continuous operation under potential hostile interference, run through relay infrastructure that could not be traced back to Earth's defense grid, and do all of this without appearing in any monitoring report that Republic intelligence would flag for Coruscant. She was working in a converted basement in the Geneva facility that smelled of circuit boards and the specific brand of instant noodles that had become the unofficial food of Earth's cyber division. 3 other members of her team were at terminals around her. All of them had been awake for 31 hours. None of them had discussed stopping. Her comlink chimed at 0340. She looked at it. "Lucas," she answered. "It's happening," Lucas said. His voice had the quality she had learned to identify over months of working alongside him. Not panic, because Lucas had burned through panic in the first 2 weeks, after first contact, and come out the other side into something more functional. The quality of someone reporting an observation with full understanding of its implications. Hours, Palpatine is moving. Yuki looked at her array status display. 87% complete. She did not say anything for a moment. How many hours? She asked. The vision isn't exact. A pause. Fewer than 12, more than 4. She did the math. At current build rate, the array reached operational capacity in 6 hours and 40 minutes. The margin was not comfortable. Bo-Katan's with you? She asked. Yes. Stay in the facility. You don't use the primary comlink channel. She was already moving, pulling up the array's construction queue and looking at where shortcuts were possible without compromising coverage integrity. I'll contact Rex. She ended the transmission and sent Rex 4 words through his channel. Timeline moved up. How many? His response came in 3 minutes. 47 captains, all holding, missing 9 battalions in Outer Rim. Poor relay coverage. She stared at that for a moment. 9 battalions in Outer Rim relay shadow meant approximately 80,000 clone troopers, whose chips she could not guarantee would be covered by the jamming array or reached by Rex's document before Palpatine broadcast. She sent back, working on coverage, stand by. Then she turned to her team. We're compressing the timeline, she said. Her team looked at the array status display, looked at her. By how much? The engineer to her left asked. His name was Dimitri, and he had a gift for relay architecture that Yuki had identified in the first week of the Cyber Division's formation and had been ruthlessly exploiting since. 4 hours. Dimitri looked at the display again, did mental calculations that were visible on his face as a series of expressions cycling through confidence, doubt, reconsideration, and arriving at something that was not quite certainty but was close enough. We cut coverage overlap in sectors 7 through 12, he said. Reduces redundancy but maintains primary activation range. Do it. If the jamming signal is actively interfered with in those sectors, then we deal with that problem when it exists. Yuki looked at him steadily. Right now, the problem that exists is the timeline. Dimitri nodded and turned back to his terminal. The basement became a different kind of quiet. The quiet of people working at the edge of what was technically possible, with the full understanding that the edge was exactly where they needed to be. On Coruscant, in the Jedi Temple's secure communications room, Mace Windu received a transmission from Dr. Nala Se that was not the confirmation message she had already sent, but something else, something longer. He read it standing. It was a complete technical record of the inhibitor chip program, not Rex's reverse-engineered documentation, but the original. Development specifications, activation protocols, the command frequency, the full scope of Tipoca City's involvement, and attached to all of it, time-stamped and verified, Nala Se's personal record of every concern she had raised internally, every conversation she had tried to initiate, every avenue that had been closed before she could walk it. The record went back 4 years. At the bottom was a note in her handwriting, which she had apparently scanned and attached rather than transcribing, as if she needed the record to show the physical evidence of having written it herself. I am a scientist. I design systems. I know what this system was designed for. I should have found a way to say so sooner. I am saying so now. Please make it count. Windu set the datapad down, crossed to the window overlooking the temple's training grounds, where a group of Padawans were running morning drills under the supervision of a knight who had no idea what was being decided 3 floors above her. He thought about what it meant to be inside an architecture so long that its walls became invisible. He thought about Nala Se sitting in Tipoca City for 4 years, with a complete technical record of the mechanism that was going to be used to kill the people she was officially in service to, raising concerns through channels that closed before she could walk them, writing notes in her own handwriting because sometimes you needed the physical act of writing to make something real enough to keep carrying. He thought about Rex writing 17 pages in clone documentation format so that the record would stand on its own if something happened to him. He thought about Lucas writing faster at 0340 because there wasn't much time and the transmission needed to carry everything essential. He activated his comlink. "Yoda," he said, "De Nala Se's full documentation just arrived. The command frequency is confirmed. We need to move to the relay infrastructure now." Yoda's voice came back immediately, which meant he had been awake, which meant he had been feeling the same thing in the Force that he had described to Windu that morning as something moving fast toward the sea. "Ready, are you?" "No," Windu said honestly. "But ready or not doesn't change the timeline." "No," Yoda agreed. "It does not." The relay infrastructure activation took 40 minutes. It was infrastructure that had not been used in Yoda's 900-year memory, which meant it had not been used since before the current Senate existed, before Palpatine's political career began, before the Clone Wars were a concept rather than a reality. It had been built into the Republic's communication architecture by Jedi Masters who understood, at some fundamental level, that institutions could be corrupted and contingencies required quiet preparation. It was not a weapon, it was a carrier, a set of relay frequencies that could transmit a signal across the Republic's full communication range without routing through the standard infrastructure that Palpatine's office monitored. Yoda used it to transmit 3 things simultaneously. The first was Rex's full documentation, including Nala Se's corroborating record, to every Jedi Knight and Master currently serving in the Grand Army. Not as a warning, as information, complete, verified, and presented without the editorial framing that turned information into instruction. Because the Masters needed to make their own decisions, and their own decisions required the full picture rather than a version of it. The second was the jamming frequency specifications from Yuki's array, transmitted to every Jedi-controlled ship in the Republic's military infrastructure with a simple instruction: broadcast this frequency continuously until further notice. The third was a message to the Senate, not to 41 senators in a classified session that generated no transcript, to all of them, 1,734 senators representing the full breadth of the Galactic Republic, receiving simultaneously on the Senate's official broadcast channel a complete package of verified documentation assembled by a clone captain, a Kaminoan scientist, a filmmaker with Force visions, and an independent cyber division from a world that had been discovered 3 months ago in uncharted space. Yoda recorded the message himself. He stood in the council chamber in the morning light and spoke for 4 minutes and 17 seconds without notes, which was not unusual for him, and without the careful diplomatic framing that council communications typically employed, which was, he said what had been done, what was built, what it was designed for, what the evidence showed about who had designed it. He said it plainly, in the specific language of someone who had understood something important late, and was saying it now because now was the only time that still had meaning. He did not say Palpatine's name until the final sentence. When he did, he said it once. Without qualifier, without the hedging language of institutional caution, and the weight of 900 years and every moment of deliberate, careful restraint that had preceded that single unhedged sentence gave it a quality that the Senate's automatic transcription system would later flag as the most replayed 4 seconds of any official Republic broadcast in recorded history. The transmission went out at 6:12 Coruscant Standard Time. Palpatine received notification of the relay broadcast at 6:13. He stood at his communication terminal and read the notification with the stillness of a man who had built his entire life on the principle that every situation had a response if you moved before the situation became unmanageable. He had been moving. He had composed and transmitted the Order 66 broadcast 14 minutes ago. While Yuki's array was still 7% from operational capacity, and Rex's document had not yet reached 9 battalions in Outer Rim Relay Shadow. He had moved first. He had been certain of it. The notification informed him that Yuki's array had reached operational capacity at 0609, 3 minutes ahead of the revised schedule that she had told her team was impossible. Achieved by cutting coverage overlap in sectors 7 through 12 and compensating with a relay bounce technique that Dimitri had invented on the spot and which had no name because it had not existed until 40 minutes ago. The broadcast had gone out. The chips had received the signal. But the jamming array had been operational for 3 minutes when the broadcast transmitted, which meant the signal had propagated through a medium that was already compromised. And what arrived at the chips in the covered sectors was not the clean activation tone, but the activation tone overlaid with jamming interference that the chip's recognition architecture interpreted as not the signal, as noise, as the electromagnetic background of a system that was not issuing a command. In 47 clone battalions across 12 theaters, nothing happened. In 9 battalions in Outer Rim Relay Shadow, in sectors 7 through 12 where coverage overlap had been cut, in the gap between what was possible and what the timeline required, something happened. Not all of it. Not the galaxy-spanning simultaneous execution that the plan had required, but enough. Enough that in 9 Outer Rim locations, Jedi Knights who had been fighting alongside clone battalions felt what they felt in the Force and understood what it meant and reacted with the speed that 3 years of combat had built into them. Most survived. Most. Rex received the confirmation at 0614. He was on the Resolute's bridge, standing next to Anakin, who had arrived from Coruscant 40 minutes ago, and had been standing there in a quality of stillness that the bridge crew recognized as the stillness of someone waiting for a thing they knew was coming. The confirmation was from Yuki. 4 words. Array held. Check casualties. Rex read it, sent it to Anakin without speaking. Anakin read it. His expression did not change in the way expressions changed when the thing you feared most had happened. It changed in a different way. The way the light changed when you had been awake all night and morning finally arrived. Not sudden, not clean, not the relief you had imagined relief would feel like. More complex, more specific. The feeling of something terrible that had been prevented, except where it hadn't, and needing to hold both of those things simultaneously. Casualties, Anakin said. Outer Rim, 9 battalions. Rex's voice was flat and precise. We're getting reports. How many Jedi? 3 confirmed. Possibly more. The relay shadow made coordination. I know, Anakin said. The bridge was very quiet. The clone troopers at their stations continued their work with the efficient indifference of people doing their jobs. Except that their work was different now in a way none of them had language for yet. Because the document Rex had sent 47 of their captains was now being transmitted ship-wide by those captains to their full battalions, and the information was moving through the Grand Army like water finding the shape of a container it hadn't known it was in. The Senate broadcast, Anakin said. Yoda's message is confirmed delivered to all 1,734 members. Palpatine. Rex pulled up the Coruscant feed. The Senate chamber was visible on the tactical display. Not in session, which meant the senators had received the broadcast outside formal session hours, and the building's internal communication networks were registering a volume of message traffic that the monitoring system flagged as unprecedented. He's in his office, Rex said. Republic intelligence assets are maintaining position. No movement yet. He's calculating, Anakin said. Yes. He knows the order failed. Yes. He knows the Senate has the documentation. Yes. Anakin looked at the Coruscant feed for a moment. He's going to run, he said. It was not a prediction. It was the conclusion of someone who had spent 13 years in relationship with a man who treated every situation as a tactical problem and understood that a tactical problem without a viable response required repositioning rather than engagement. Not yet. He'll wait to see if the Senate fractures, if enough members reject the evidence or call it fabricated, if there's still a path through the political architecture. Is there? Rex asked. Anakin thought about 41 senators who had attended a meeting that generated no transcript. He thought about the Senate's emergency powers legislation that had been accumulating for 3 years. Thought about the specific senators who had built their careers on their relationship with the Chancellor's office and whose political survival was entangled with the credibility of the man Yoda had just named plainly in a 4-minute broadcast. Some will fracture, he said, but not enough. Yoda's message carried Nalasi's documentation, Rex's documentation, and Earth's independent technical verification. That's 3 independent source categories verifying the same mechanism. The senators who want to reject it can reject it. The ones who need to believe something true about the republic they've been serving, they'll have enough. Rex nodded. Outside the viewport, the Resolute moved through real space above Earth's system. Below them, the 8 billion people were going about their days with the specific quality of people who had spent 3 months understanding that the universe was considerably more dangerous than they had previously known and had decided to exist in it anyway. Most of them did not know what had happened in the last 2 hours. Most of them would not know for some time, but the frequency that had been designed to convert 3 million human beings into instruments of someone else's conclusion had been transmitted into a medium that was already compromised. And what arrived on the other end was noise. Just noise. Background electromagnetic nothing in the vast, indifferent spectrum of a solar system that had been discovered by accident 3 months ago, when a damaged ship jumped blind and found, against every probability, a planet full of humans who had never heard of the Force and didn't need it to refuse. "Sir," the communications officer said, "Master Kenobi is transmitting from the negotiator." "Put it through," Anakin said. Obi-Wan's hologram appeared. He looked like a man who had not slept and was not thinking about sleep. "The order failed in coverage," he said. "3 masters confirmed, possibly more. I'm coordinating casualty assessment with the Council." "I know," Anakin said. "Rex has the numbers." Palpatine, still in his office, calculating. "We need him in custody before he finds a path." Obi-Wan paused. "Windu is moving a team to the Senate district." "I know," Anakin said again. "I should be there." Obi-Wan looked at him through the hologram. "Should you?" he asked. Not as a challenge, as a genuine question. Anakin understood what the question was actually asking. 13 years of relationship with a man who had been patiently and precisely cultivating him for a specific purpose. The anger that 3 years of war had built. The fear that had been carried and named and was no longer alone but was still present and still real. The specific history between Anakin Skywalker and Sheev Palpatine that was not tactical but was personal in the way the most important things were personal. "Yes," Anakin said. "Because you can help," Obi-Wan said. It was not a question either. "Because I can help," Anakin confirmed. "And because I've been running toward things that frighten me for 3 years and calling it courage. This time I'm walking toward something that doesn't frighten me anymore, and I'd like to know what that feels like." Obi-Wan was quiet for a moment. "Don't do anything I wouldn't do," he said finally. "That's a very wide parameter." "I know," Obi-Wan said, and something in his expression was the closest thing to peace that Anakin had seen on his former master's face in 3 years. "That's intentional." The hologram ended. Anakin turned to Rex. "Hold the Resolute in current position," he said. "I'm going to Coruscant." "Sir." Rex paused. "Be careful." Anakin looked at him, at the captain who had written 17 pages in clone documentation format, because clarity mattered more than comfort, who had filed Fives' discovery under insufficient information for 2 years and had decided, when the information became sufficient, that what it was sufficient for required action rather than acceptance, who was standing on a bridge above Earth in armor that still bore Republic markings that meant something different now than they had yesterday. "You too," Anakin said. He walked to the turbo lift. The Resolute breathed its systems around him. 3 decks below, 3,000 men were reading a document that explained what had been in their skulls for 3 years and deciding, each of them individually, in the specific privacy of their own understanding, what that meant about who they were and what they were for. The turbolift doors opened. Anakin stepped in. The doors closed. Palpatine was still in his office when they arrived. This was, Anakin understood afterward, a choice. A man with 30 years of contingency architecture had options that most people didn't have. Routes out of the Senate district that Republic intelligence didn't have complete maps of. Ships that weren't registered to any identity traceable to the Chancellor's office. Resources accumulated over decades of patient construction that could have gotten him off-world before Yoda's broadcast finished transmitting. He had stayed. Anakin thought about why in the shuttle on the way to Coruscant and arrived at an answer that was not comforting but was probably true. Palpatine stayed because leaving conceded the architecture, because the plan had not failed completely. 9 battalions had fired, 3 masters were dead. The political fracture in the Senate was real, even if it wasn't sufficient. And a man who had built 30 years of contingencies understood that conceding prematurely was its own category of defeat. While he remained, while he held the office, while the emergency powers technically still rested in his hands, there was still a path. Some version of the architecture still standing. He stayed because he was still calculating. Windu's team reached the office first. 4 masters. The kind of team you assembled when you understood that the person you were going to confront had a red lightsaber and had trained under one of the most skilled duelists in Jedi history and had been practicing the dark side for decades while everyone who might have stopped him was busy fighting a war he had designed. Anakin arrived 12 minutes after them. He knew something had gone wrong before the turbolift opened because he felt it in the Force. The specific signature of a lightsaber confrontation in progress, violent and close and carrying the chaotic texture of a fight between people of extraordinary capability with real stakes on both sides. The office doors were sealed. He cut through them. 2 masters were down when he entered, not dead, incapacitated, which in a fight of this quality was a distinction that required active maintenance. Windu was still standing, his purple blade locked against Palpatine's red one, his expression carrying the specific quality of a man who had been fighting at the absolute limit of his ability for several minutes and had not yet found the edge of what he could sustain. Palpatine looked different. Not the Chancellor's face, not the constructed warmth, not the fatherly concern, not the specific expressions that 13 years of relationship had made familiar. The face underneath all of that, which Anakin had never seen and was now seeing, was older and stranger and carried the quality of something that had been patient for a very long time and had stopped being patient. He was not losing. He was also not winning, which meant Windu was extraordinary, which Anakin had always known in the abstract and was now understanding concretely in the way you understood things when the abstract became physical and immediate. Palpatine saw Anakin enter. Something moved across his face, not hope, not the calculated warmth of the Chancellor's expression. Something more direct than that. The recognition of someone who had spent 13 years building a relationship toward a specific moment and was now seeing that moment arrive in a different form than intended, but arrive nonetheless. "Anakin," he said. Windu's blade pressed harder. The office was very still except for the hum of lightsabers and the specific sound of two people at the edge of their capability, holding each other there through sheer quality of will. "Don't," Windu said. Not to Palpatine, to Anakin. His voice carried the compressed authority of a man managing too many things simultaneously. "This ends here." Anakin looked at Palpatine, at the face underneath the architecture, or at the thing that had been patient for 30 years and was no longer patient and was showing itself clearly for the first time in a way that all the constructed warmth and fatherly concern had never shown itself. He thought about the corridor on the negotiator, about sitting with the fear and naming it out loud and finding that the naming didn't make it larger, about Obi-Wan's face in the transit light when he said, "I should have been that person years ago," about Lucas at 0340 writing faster because there wasn't much time, about Rex writing 17 pages because clarity mattered more than comfort, about Chen in a storage room off a training floor, looking at her hand with the expression of someone whose framework required revision, saying, "I want to understand it," with the intensity of someone who intended to understand it completely. About Earth, about 8 billion people who had looked at the architecture of their situation. 2 fleets, 2 ultimatums, a war they hadn't started and hadn't been consulted about, and had said, "We see the shape of this, and we are not going to let the shape determine our response." He looked at Palpatine. "It's over," Anakin said, not to Windu, to Palpatine, directly in the way you said things that needed to be said to the person they were for rather than to the room. Palpatine's expression shifted. The calculation was still there. It was always there. It was the fundamental mode. But underneath the calculation was something else now. Something that had not been visible in 13 years of careful management. Not fear, exactly. The specific feeling of someone whose architecture had been built to manage a future that was no longer the future they were standing in. "You've been told things," Palpatine said. His voice had the quality it used when he was speaking to Anakin in the private register, the one calibrated for the relationship rather than the room. "About me, about what I've been building, Lucas's visions, Kenobi's fears, a clone captain who found something he didn't have the context to understand correctly." He pressed slightly against Windu's blade, not enough to change the dynamic, but enough to communicate that he was still in the calculation. "You know me, Anakin, 13 years. You know what I've offered you, what I've always offered." "I know what you've offered," Anakin said. "Then you understand that what appears to be architecture is actually management," Anakin said, "of my fear, of my isolation, of the specific gap between what I was afraid of and what I needed to hear." He paused. "I understand it exactly." Lucas described it in detail, the sequence of it, the words you were going to use, the gap they were designed to fill. Palpatine was very still. "We're going to use," he said. "The conversation already happened," Anakin said, "just not with you." Something moved across Palpatine's face that was not calculation and was not warmth and was the closest thing to genuine response that Anakin had ever seen from him. The response of someone encountering a fact they had not included in their model and understanding in real time the implications of its absence. "Kenobi," he said, "among others." "Earth." "Yes." Palpatine looked at him for a long moment. The lightsabers hummed. The two incapacitated masters maintained their consciousness at the edge. Windu held his position with the absolute precision of a man who had been doing this for several minutes and would continue doing it for as long as necessary, because necessary was the category that determined duration. "You could still," Palpatine began. "No," Anakin said simply. "I couldn't." One word, the specific weight of a word that had been possible for him to say because of everything that had preceded this moment. Not courage, exactly. Not the performing of courage that he had sometimes confused for the real thing in 3 years of war. Something quieter. The natural conclusion of a series of choices made by people who had decided that clarity mattered more than comfort, and that fear with company was different from fear alone. Palpatine looked at him, and then something happened that Anakin had not expected, and that Windu had not planned for, and that afterward none of them could describe precisely to the Council's inquiry, because it did not have adequate language in standard documentation. Palpatine stopped. Not the stopping of defeat. Not the capitulation of someone who had run out of tactical options, though he had run out of tactical options. Something more fundamental. The stopping of a man who had been in motion for 30 years and had encountered for the first time a moment that his motion had not been able to prevent. The red lightsaber deactivated. Windu did not lower his blade. His expression communicated that he was not going to lower his blade based on a gesture that could be a tactic. "It's not a tactic," Anakin said quietly. Windu looked at him. "He's not calculating anymore," Anakin said. He stopped. Windu held his position for another moment. Then, with the careful precision of a man who trusted his own judgment and was choosing to trust someone else's, he stepped back. One step. Blade still active, but one step. Palpatine stood in the center of his office. The constructed warmth was gone. The fatherly concern was gone. The careful management of expression that had been the surface of every interaction Anakin had ever had with him was gone. What remained was something much older and much stranger, and Anakin thought, much more tired than anything the construction had ever shown. "How?" Palpatine said. It was not a tactical question. It was not a question he expected an answer to. It was the specific sound of a man who had built his understanding of human nature on the principle that isolation was permanent and that fear without an exit produced predictable behavior, and was encountering at the end of 30 years evidence that the principle was not universal. Anakin understood the question. "Someone sat with me," he said, "in a corridor, and was honest about being afraid." He paused. That was all. Palpatine looked at him. The office was quiet. Outside, Coruscant continued its perpetual artificial day. In the Senate chamber, 3 kilometers away, the 1,734 senators were in various states of processing a 4-minute broadcast from a 900-year-old Jedi master who had named something plainly that had needed to be named for 30 years. In 12 active theaters across the Republic, 47 clone captains were transmitting Rex's document to their full battalions. In 9 Outer Rim locations, the aftermath of a partial Order 66 was being assessed by Jedi and clone officers who were discovering, in the specific way you discovered things after the worst had almost happened, what it meant that the worst had only almost happened. In Geneva, Lucas put down his notebook, The vision had ended, not darkly, not with the cut to black that his previous visions of this moment had always produced. The sense of something closing, a something extinguishing, the specific texture of a future where the wrong choices had been made and everything that followed bore their shape. This ending was different. It was not triumphant. 3 masters were dead in Outer Rim locations, and the grief of that was real and would remain real. And nothing about the outcome changed what those deaths meant to the people who had known them. The Senate fracture was real and would require months of careful repair. The 9 Outer Rim battalions that had partially fired would carry the knowledge of what they had almost done and what they had been built to do, and that knowledge was not simple or clean. Nothing about it was simple or clean. But the vision was light rather than dark at its ending, and Lucas sat with that for a long moment in his Geneva quarters, with the notebook on the table and the coffee gone cold, and the early morning coming through the window, the same way it always did, as if the universe found the specifics of what happened inside it less remarkable than the fact that it continued. Bo-Katan appeared in the doorway. "It's done?" she asked. "Mostly," Lucas said. "The way things are mostly done. The main thing is done." Bo-Katan looked at him. "You look different," she said. "I feel different," he said. "I've been seeing this moment for 50 years. Always the same ending, always the same darkness." He looked at his notebook. "This time it went a different way." "Because of Earth," Bo-Katan said. Not a question. "Because of Earth," Lucas confirmed. "Because 8 billion people said no to something they should have said no to, and said it loudly enough that it changed what was possible for everyone else." He paused. "That's the thing about resistance. You can never calculate in advance who it's going to give permission to." Bo-Katan was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'll put the kettle on." Lucas almost laughed. It was the laugh of someone returning from a very long distance and finding small, ordinary things unexpectedly moving. "Yes," he said. "Please." Windu's team brought Palpatine into custody at 0741 Coruscant Standard Time. The Senate session that convened at 900 was the longest in Republic history, running continuously for 31 hours, with members participating in shifts as the full scope of the documentation was reviewed, verified, debated, and verified again by independent analysts who arrived at the same conclusions through different methodologies and kept arriving there, no matter how many times the process was run. There were senators who rejected the evidence, not many. Fewer than the fracture Palpatine had been calculating on. The architecture of 30 years was real and visible in the voting patterns of the minority who needed it to be false for their own political survival. But architecture that had been invisible became visible the moment you named it, and Yoda had named it plainly, and plainly named things lost their ability to manage the people who could now see them. The emergency powers were revoked on the second day. The clone army's status was formally reviewed beginning on the 3rd. Nala Se testified for 6 hours. Erex's documentation was entered into official record. The inhibitor chip removal program began in the 4th week, coordinated across every active theater simultaneously, the largest single medical operation in Republic history, carried out by clone troopers who had been told what was in their skulls and had, individually and collectively, responded with the specific quality that 3 years of watching them had led Anakin to expect. They handled it, not without difficulty, not without the specific grief of understanding that the loyalty they had given had been designed to be used against them, and that their entire existence had been structured around a purpose that was not the purpose they would have chosen. That grief was real, and it did not resolve quickly, but they handled it because handling things was what they did. And because Rex had sent 47 captains a document that began with, "I found something and I need you to know what it is," and that foundation, the foundation of being told the truth about yourself before someone else could use it as a weapon, turned out to be sufficient. Anakin returned to Earth 6 weeks after Palpatine's arrest. Not on official business. The official business was being handled by people who were better at official business than he was, which was a category that included most of the Jedi Council and significant portions of the Republic's diplomatic infrastructure. He came because he wanted to see it. The planet was the same and different in the way things were the same and different when you had been part of something significant involving them. The atmosphere was the same composition. The cities were the same cities. 8 billion people still going about their lives with the specific quality of people who understood that the universe was dangerous and had decided to exist in it anyway. He stood in Geneva with Obi-Wan, not on the observation deck this time, just on a street in the morning, with the city doing what cities did around them. "Lucas is leaving," Obi-Wan said. "I know, he told me. Going home to California." Anakin watched a woman walk past with one of the ubiquitous communication devices, completely absorbed in it, navigating the sidewalk through some combination of peripheral vision and long practice. He said the visions have stopped. "Do you think they have?" "I think he hopes they have." Anakin paused. "Now I think the Force gave him what it needed him to carry, and he carried it, and now it's done." He considered. "Or it's not done, and the next vision is going to arrive at 0340, and he'll write it down anyway because that's who he is." Obi-Wan made a sound that was not quite a laugh. "Chen's staying," Anakin said. "I know. She wants to continue the training. She wants to understand the mechanism. She told me the Force is the most interesting unsolved problem she's encountered, and she intends to approach it empirically." "That should be fascinating for everyone involved," Obi-Wan said, with the specific quality of someone who had spent enough time with Chen to understand that this assessment was accurate in ways that would produce results nobody could currently predict. They walked for a while. The city moved around them. A child ran past chasing something. 2 elderly men sat outside a cafe, arguing about something neither of them was going to change their mind about. A street musician played an instrument that Anakin didn't recognize, its sound carrying the particular quality of music made by someone who played because they needed to rather than because anyone was listening. 3 masters, Anakin said. "Yes. The outer rim coverage gap. Yes. If Yuki had gotten the array operational 4 hours earlier." "She didn't," Obi-Wan said, not dismissively, as a fact. "She got it operational as early as was possible, given the timeline she was given. 4 hours earlier would have required 4 hours earlier, which would have required a different set of choices by different people at different moments. He paused. We made the choices we made when we were able to make them. 3 people died who didn't need to die, and that's true, and it matters, and it will always matter. And it's also true that we prevented what was designed to happen to 3 million people, and that's true, and it also matters. Anakin walked with that for a while. Lucas said the rebellion never had to form, he said eventually, because the Empire never rose. Yes, the farm boy from the desert planet never had to become a hero, because the thing that required a hero was prevented. Yes, does that bother you? That there's a version of events where everything gets worse and then gets better through extraordinary sacrifice, and instead we got a version that's messier, less clean. It requires a lot of Senate hearings and medical procedures and Rex explaining inhibitor chip architecture to people who really don't want to understand it. Obi-Wan thought about this. No, he said. I think the version where extraordinary sacrifice is required is terrible, even when the sacrifice succeeds. I think the better version is the one where enough people see the shape of the trap early enough that the trap doesn't fully close. He paused. Even if that version is messier, especially if it's messier, clean stories are usually someone's propaganda. Anakin almost smiled. They stopped at an intersection, waited for the traffic signal with the specific patience of people who had fought a 3-year war, and found on the other side of it that waiting for traffic signals felt both trivial and unexpectedly pleasant. I'm going back to Coruscant tomorrow, Anakin said. Padme's working on the emergency powers revocation legislation. She needs... He stopped, started differently. I want to be there. Yes, Obi-Wan said simply. Not to protect her. She doesn't need protection. No, to be there. Yes, Obi-Wan said again. That's what it is, isn't it? The difference. He looked at the intersection, at the city, at the ordinary, unremarkable morning continuing around them. Not possession, presence, not preventing loss. Choosing to be where the person you love is because that's where you want to be, and trusting them to be who they are in it. The traffic signal changed. They walked. The nightmares, Anakin said. Yes? Still there, less loud. He paused. Not gone. They may not go, Obi-Wan said. Fear about people you love doesn't resolve. It just changes shape as you stop carrying it alone. That's not very reassuring. No, it's accurate, which is different. Anakin thought about accuracy, about Rex writing 17 pages because accuracy mattered more than the comfort of not knowing. About Lucas writing faster at 0340 because the transmission needed to carry everything essential. About Chen looking at the round on the shelf next to the spectroscopic analysis and saying, my framework requires revision with the intensity of someone who intended to revise it completely. About Obi-Wan in a hyperspace corridor saying I was afraid in the flat declarative tone of someone delivering an accurate fact. About himself walking into Palpatine's office with the fear still present and real and carrying it alongside everything else rather than ahead of everything else. The fear not driving, just there, his. Accurate is better, he said. Yes, Obi-Wan agreed. Geneva moved around them, one sun in the sky above, which Anakin still found quietly remarkable. The specific quality of a world that had been alone for its entire existence and had responded to the ending of that aloneness, not by choosing a side, but by refusing to allow anyone else to choose for it. Earth remained. Difficult, innovative, absolutely committed to making no one's strategic calculations easy, perpetually surprising the galaxy with the specific quality of a civilization that approached every unsolved problem as if the solution was findable if you were willing to question the assumptions baked into every previous attempt. 8 billion people. One sun. No force sensitivity, except for the one physicist in Geneva who had deflected a live round with her bare hand and intended to understand the mechanism completely. The morning continued. The street musician played. Somewhere above them, invisible in the daylight, the Resolute held position in Earth's orbit, with 3,000 men aboard who were reading a document and deciding, each of them individually, what it meant that they had been built for something and had chosen something else. And in a quiet office in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, Yoda sat in the morning light and felt the Force doing what the Force did, moving through everything, binding it together, flowing around the choices that beings made and carrying them forward into whatever the choices created. It was not peaceful, it was not resolved. The three masters were dead and would remain dead, and their absence would be felt in specific rooms and specific conversations and specific moments when someone reached for a presence that was not there anymore. The Senate was in the middle of the longest session in Republic history and would be in the middle of it for some time. The Outer Rim had 9 battalions processing the knowledge of what they had almost done. The architecture of 30 years was coming down piece by piece through Senate hearings and official reviews, and the specific slow work of dismantling something that had been built gradually enough that most people hadn't seen it going up. It was not peaceful and it was not resolved. But the Force felt different than it had felt at dawn yesterday or last week, or in the 3 years of the war that had been designed to end in a specific darkness that it had not ended in. Yoda sat with the difference for a while. Then he stood. There was work to do. There was always work to do. That was the thing about choosing the light deliberately rather than by default. It did not end the work. It just changed what the work was for. He walked to the door, opened it. The morning was full and bright and full of the specific ordinary complexity of a galaxy that had not ended, which was all the morning needed to be. He went to do the work. The galaxy did not remember Earth the way Earth had expected to be remembered. It did not remember Earth as the world that tipped the balance of the Clone Wars, though it had. It did not remember Earth as the civilization that produced the Force vision that named the trap, though Lucas had. It did not remember Earth as the cyber division that jammed the activation frequency, though Yuki had built the array in 19 days and compressed the final hours through a relay technique that had no name because it had not existed until she invented it. The galaxy remembered Earth the way you remembered the person who said the thing that needed to be said in the room where it needed to be said. Not heroically. Specifically, the record showed a world discovered by accident in uncharted space, by a damaged ship that jumped blind and found against all probability a planet full of humans who had never heard of the Force. A world that had been offered conquest twice and had refused both times. Not because it had the power to enforce the refusal, but because it had decided that who you were mattered more than whether you survived being who you were. A world that had looked at the architecture of its situation from the outside and named what it saw. That was what changed things. Not the weapons programs, though those mattered. Not the Mandalorian alliance, though that mattered too. Not the cyber division's technical capabilities or the relay bounce technique or the jamming array, completed 4 minutes ahead of an impossible schedule. The thing that changed things was simpler. 8 billion people who had never heard of the Force demonstrated in the specific circumstances of their first contact with a galaxy that wanted to use them, that the shape of a trap became visible the moment you stopped being alone inside it. That was the lesson. It spread the way real lessons spread, not through official record or Senate documentation or Jedi Council proceedings, but through the specific transmission of one person telling another person about a moment that had changed something for them. Rex told it to 47 captains. Chen told it to the researchers who worked alongside her. Bo-Katan told it to her clan in the specific language of people who had been fighting for independence long enough to recognize it when it arrived in an unexpected form. Obi-Wan told it in a corridor in hyperspace without notes to the one person who most needed to hear it. And Anakin Skywalker, standing on a street in Geneva on an ordinary morning with one sun in the sky and the city going about its life around him, told it to nobody and everybody simultaneously simply by being a man who had chosen, in the specific moment that mattered, not to be alone with the thing he was afraid of. The Clone Wars ended, not cleanly, not with the clarity of a definitive final battle or a single moment of resolution, with Senate hearings and medical procedures and a very long process of dismantling an architecture that had been built gradually enough that most people hadn't seen it going up. The Empire never rose. The farm boy from the desert planet grew up on a moisture farm and never knew what he had been spared from being required to become. Earth remained. One sun, 8 billion people, no hyperspace capability and no apparent plans to develop it, which the Republic's diplomatic corps found simultaneously relieving and inexplicable until Chen explained in a briefing that became something of a legend in Republic xenological circles that Earth was still working on the Force problem and preferred to solve one impossible thing at a time. The galaxy continued, which was, in the end, the only ending worth having. Not perfect, not clean, not the triumphant resolution of a story that had known all along where it was going, just the galaxy continuing with all its complexity and grief and ordinary morning light because enough people had seen the shape of the trap and chosen something else. That was enough. That was, it turned out, exactly enough.